Well, first of all, Scott Galloway, welcome to the
Thank
next
you.
big idea.
Thanks for having me.
Or I should say, welcome back to the next big idea.
That's
This is
right.
your second time on the show.
Thanks.
So, Scott, you are known for your irreverent honesty. So the topic of money, I think, is a great one for you because it's a topic that I think we collectively lie about a lot. And what I've always found so interesting about you as a listener of your podcast and a reader of your books is your peculiar mix of cockiness and humility. And this is a book that I think was born out of both your cockiness and your humility. Let's start today with the humility side. What are some of the biggest mistakes you've made in your life? And I don't just mean financial mistakes, but I mean the mistakes that when you look back on them, it really causes you pain to think about.
We're going to need a bigger boat. I wasn't as kind as I should have been when I was younger. I was very selfish. Oh God, I fucked up so many ways. I got divorced when I was young. That was devastating. I had a company. Most of my failings have been a failing of character. I could have been nicer to people. I should have forgiven myself more easily. I struggle with anger and depression, so I think a lot about the past, and I can't forgive myself, and it's kind of haunted me my whole life. Just got very uncomfortable in here. I professionally have had a lot of failure. I've had a company go Chapter 11, and it took me 10 years to fail slowly. We were talking about this before. Success is the best thing. Failing fast was the next best thing. I had a company fail slowly over a decade, which was just heartbreaking. 2000, I didn't recognize this going to the book. 2000, I never diversified. I'm always like, I'm awesome. I can pick winners. My companies are going to be amazing. I'd read these stories about people doubling down and mortgaging everything and buying more stock. So when I had Red Envelope and I went public, I margined the stock and bought more. And I didn't realize the power of diversification, that I should have taken more money off the table and just put some aside and let it grow in boring things like low-cost index funds. And I woke up at 42 when my oldest son had the poor judgment to come marching out of my girlfriend. And the 2008 financial recession had hit, and I woke up and I didn't have any money. And I thought, Jesus Christ, I've made so much money. I've had such quote unquote curb retail success, but I didn't just put, I never was in debt. I was never in trouble. But if I'd just been smarter and put a little bit of money away in boring things that weren't related to tech, I was in the delivery room and I was so nauseous I couldn't stand. And everyone assumed it was because I'm not good with childbirth, which is true, but it was this overwhelming sense of failure as a man that I was supposed to be responsible for this kid now, and I've failed day one, right? Already like failing this kid. And I think these are very healthy, what I'll call masculine attributes. I take economic responsibility for my family. It ends up my partner is very good at money, and that's wonderful. But I think a lot about masculinity. I think a good place to start as a man is to assume economic responsibility for your household. And by the way, that sometimes means getting out of the way of your partner who's better at the money thing and being more supportive of him or her. But take responsibility. I think it's a good place to start. I felt that immensely. And so not being able to take care of or feeling like I was failing after all this privilege, all this success, all this opportunity, just humiliating. So not being a high character person.
And I remember Red Envelope, and I'm sure a lot of people in this room do. I think I was a customer of Red Envelope.
I needed you to buy a lot more.
And it was apparently, yeah. But it IPO'd, and you were on paper worth a lot of money.
Yeah.
And then what was it? Was it the 2000 crash? And so you pretty much got wiped out. And that's we learn very quickly in those situations, don't we?
Yeah, some of us. I came out of the gate strong. I had no money growing up, and it was very important to me. My book is not about what should be. My book is about what is. I think America becomes more of itself every day, and that is it's a loving, generous place if you have money. It's a rapacious, violent place if you don't. And so given the inequity of America, the opportunities, the lack thereof, whatever you want to call it, it's a book about trying to get economic security. And it's almost like a letter to myself when I was younger, like the mistakes I made, some of the things I did right, some of the things I did wrong. But yeah, came out of the gate strong, started a company called Profit. I started a strategy firm when I was 26, sold it for 30 or 33 million 7 months later. So I felt like I had a lot of money. That was a lot of money for me at the time. Boom, doing great. E-commerce incubator, backed by Gold and JP Morgan, back here in 99, moved back to New York, changed my life, got divorced, left tech, started teaching, always wanted to teach, thought I was going to be, I was worth a lot of money on paper, was looking at jets. What do I do with the rest of my life? I want to be a teacher. I want to live in New York. Came back here, 2000 hit, broke. Not broke, but starting over again. But that was okay. I was young. Build my way back up to 2008. Kid comes along, wham, again, broke. And here's a lesson. When things happen to you, realize that 49% is you, but 51% is the market. And that goes for both sides of success and failure. When you're really killing it, when you get promoted at work, when you have an investment go up, don't believe your own press. Be humble. Realize a lot of your success is not your fault. And try and be really humble. As a matter of fact, you are never more prone to a really stupid decision than right after a huge win. Because you start believing it's you and that you can manage the market. It's not. The market trumps individual performance. On the flip side, also recognize that a lot of your failure is not your fault and forgive yourself. Because the thing I have been able to do is with personal and professional upset or disruption or disappointment, and everyone has that. If you're going to love people, you're going to have grief in your life. If you're going to try and score above your weight class economically, personally, you're going to have to take a lot of risk. You're going to get, occasionally it's not going to work. But try and forgive yourself and not lose your sense of enthusiasm. But 2008, more that was rough. I started another business in 2009. I took everything I had and I bought 3 stocks. And I'm not suggesting you do this, but I bought Netflix, Amazon, and Apple. And those are up 40 and 60 fold since then. And here's the problem, and this is kind of a bridge. The people in this room don't have a chance to buy anything cheap because we have used your credit card to bail me out. COVID was the biggest intergenerational theft in history. Flushed $7 trillion in the economy. 85% of it wasn't spent. So it went into the market. What did that do? It sent real estate and stocks skyrocketing because we decided that 1 million people dead in America would be bad, but what would be tragic is if older people lost money. And so the natural disruption and churn hasn't taken place in the last 15 years. So anyone under the age of 40 or 45 hasn't had a chance to buy assets inexpensively. So anyways, I got lucky as I was coming into really my prime income earning years in 2009 when everything was cheap. I doubled down. I started a business called L2. I got really serious about saving. I started making a lot of money and I started putting a ton of money into the market, everything. I gamified it. I want to put 100, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000. Oh, I got a partner that's economically on board with me, 25,000 a month into the market. I mean, this is a story of privilege. But the last 15 years for me have just been, the wins in the sales of asset owners the last 15 years have been just extraordinary. And I finally got smart and I started diversifying and buying stocks in unrelated industries such that if one went down, the other would go up. And the rich pay fewer taxes. My average tax rate over the last 10 years has been 17%. If you don't think we're fucking the poor, oh my God. 1202, does anyone know what 1202 is? My last company I sold for 158 million. First 10 million was tax-free. I just made an investment. I'm bragging now, but I'm desperate for your affirmation. And I think rich people should talk. I think rich people should talk about money. I think this notion that it's uncouth to talk about money is nothing but an effort to keep poor people poor because rich people know how much money you're making. They know how much their employees are making. So it's an asymmetry of information where I know how much everyone is making, but you don't, which cedes power from you to the wealthy. But
and rich people talk to each other about money
all the time.
Right. In a way that they don't publicly. Right. Which is a little bit conspiratorial.
100%. And there's something called 1202. I made an investment. I invested $2.5 million in a company, 7 years, distressed credit investment, did great. First $25 million tax-free. Does that make any sense? Meanwhile, if you're a student If you have a student loan and you can't afford your payments because for whatever reason life is hard for you, that debt is not dischargeable in bankruptcy. It's one of the only forms of debt that's not dischargeable in bankruptcy. I make all of my money from capital gains, selling assets, owning assets. So my tax rate is much lower than if you make your money working. Capital mortgage interest rate, second biggest tax deduction. Who owns homes? Who makes their money from buying, selling assets? People our age. Who makes money from work and sweat, right? And pays rent? People your age. 40 years ago, the average 7-year-old is 72% wealthier than they were 40 years ago. The average 25-year-old is 24% less wealthy. You're going to transfer $1.5 trillion out of your paycheck every week, not every week, but every year, to the wealthiest cohort in the history of the planet, seniors. I'm not suggesting we do away with Social Security, but it should be called Social Security, not Senior Security. Transfers of money should be based on if you need it, not whether you're using a catheter. I mean, it's insane how much money young people, it used to be 3 to 1, the amount of money we spent on seniors versus kids. That's 1990. 2019, it's 8 to 1. 8 to 1. And COVID was the ultimate intergenerational theft. Anyways, I don't know where I was going.
Well, if more young people and middle-aged people in the room read your book, hopefully we'll shift some of the distribution of wealth here. But one thing I've enjoyed about your podcast is that you are extremely candid about, you have taken upon yourself to try to rectify this kind of taboo we have collectively about talking about money.
No, thanks.
So with that in mind, how rich are you?
It's weird. I was embarrassed. When I was young, I was embarrassed about how little money I had. When you grow up in a household that doesn't have any money, it's like this ghost follows you and your mom around and says you're not worthy, kind of whispering, right? You're not, you guys have fucked up, right? You get that insecurity. And now that I have a lot of money, I'm embarrassed by it. What I'll say is that I decided, I'm a big fan of Daniel Kahneman, who died about a month ago. And his book, Thinking Slow and Fast, kind of changed my life, or not changed my life, changed my approach to a lot of things. But he has this seminal study about money and happiness. And the myth is that money can't buy happiness. What bullshit. There's a correlation between money and happiness. That's the bad news. Middle-income people are happier than lower-income. Upper-income people are happier than middle-income. That's the bad news. The good news is it starts to flatline. Once you get above a few $1 million, incremental income doesn't provide you with a lot of happiness. I decided that once I hit my number, I would either spend it all or give it away above that. My number was $100 million. I passed out about 7 years ago. Since then, I either spend it. Why? Because I'm selfish and I love nice things, and I'm going to squeeze the shit out of this lemon called life. I do amazing things. I think it's a ton of fun. I do amazing things with friends and family, and I'm an atheist. I think at some point I'll look into my kids' eyes and know our relationship is coming to an end. So I take them to World Cup. And if there's another nice family, I take them with me. I just spend a shit ton of money, and I fucking love it. And then anything above that, I tax myself at 100 to 200% a year. I look at how much money I spend every year, and I double it, and I give it away. And that's I don't want to call it my guilt tax, but that's me trying to say, okay, you talk about how little taxes you pay and how much money you have. What are you actually doing? I don't see any reason why anyone needs more than $100 million. I just don't see any reason. You're not going to get any happiness from it. It's going to provide no utility to you. The difference between 100 million and 100 billion, I just don't think Elon Musk is any happier than me. I don't think Jeff Bezos might be a little bit happier than me, but so I don't believe in hoarding. And I'd like to start a gestalt in America or a zeitgeist where you get to your number, either spend it. Spending is important. It fuels the economy. It's good and it's fun. Why not? I can't stand when rich people don't know how to spend their money. Or give it away. My kids are going to be fucked up enough on their own without that kind of money to worry about. So anyways, I have a good amount of money, but I'm not a billionaire. I don't have any desire to be a billionaire. But I have a lot of money. I have more than I'd ever thought. And I'm just going to use it to enjoy myself and, get involved in things I'm very passionate about.
And why do you think it is that we're we have so much trouble talking about money. I mean, it does occur to me that like if I'm at a dinner party in New York, it would be more comfortable for me to say to the hosts, ask them the question, how often do you have sex? Than it would be to say, how much money do you make? Right? I mean, it's a more embarrassing question to ask. And yet there are certain contexts within which people are very candid, right? Talking about money among people they consider to be their peers. Why is it you think we have this discomfort?
Well, some of it is for survival, right? If there is a zombie apocalypse or there's a revolution, I'm on the wrong list. So some of it is fly below the radar. I'm a Jew. We've been told forever that you're supposed to hide your success, fly under the radar. People know, I mean, Jewish and successful was a recipe for being a scapegoat for the most of history. So I think there's a certain amount, and also talking about your wealth feels tacky, right? That you're rubbing it in other people's faces. You don't want people to feel bad about themselves. Also, it's just smart because people are going to hold you more accountable, and wealthy people don't want to be held accountable. If I have an assistant and I'm not paying my assistant well, it's kind of like, well, what the fuck? Like, how could you not pay your people well? There are warranted additional expectations on the wealthy. So why create those expectations for yourself? Keep your number below. The decent algorithm for happiness is to be rich but anonymous. I mean, all this shit will come crashing down for me. I don't know how it's going to come down, but it will.
You've really screwed this up.
Yeah. It's going to come crashing down. There's an industrial complex in tearing down people who have some fame and some money. There's too much. The algorithms love it. The media loves it. At some point, I'm pretty out there with my personal failings. At some point, it'll all come crashing down. So my advice to people is to be rich but anonymous. But I think young people, I think it helps to tell people about money, help them openly evaluate how they get wealthy, how they get economic security, your failures, your successes. And also, I think everyone who has over $1 million, I think their wealth should be published, and their community and the IRS should hold them accountable. And I can't tell you the ecosystem of the super wealthy, which I'm not part of, who literally don't pay any taxes. They move to Dubai, they change their passport, they have shell companies, and they literally pay zero taxes. It is the wealthiest people in the world, truly the wealthiest people in the world, don't pay any tax. And you can't have, eventually, that's what Karl Marx said about capitalism. Eventually, it collapses on itself if the wealthiest and most privileged people don't pay back into the system. And the problem is, and this happens throughout society, wealthy people aggregate power, they weaponize government, and they figure out a way why they shouldn't pay taxes. The tax code's gone from 400 pages to 4,000 in the last 30 years. If you have GPS, you want to navigate by starlight. So the more complicated the tax code gets, the better it is for wealthy people who can afford tax advisors to help them navigate this complexity. So everything, I think, almost everything we've done in the last 30 years around the tax code has been to reduce the taxes on the wealthy. And I think I said this, my average tax rate the last 10 years has been 17%. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Warren Buffett has been great on this. He pays less taxes than his secretary. So your advice to young people is, be intentional about making money so you can provide for your family. And well, let me lob you a softball. How do you feel about the standard advice to young people? Follow your passion.
Everybody knows. I think it's just the shittiest advice you could get. We at NYU, we invite 2 luncheon speakers. We invite really inspiring, interesting, accomplished people, and we invite billionaires. And we've decided once you have 3 commas, you have insight into life. And so we invite billionaires. And they always end their speeches with the same bullshit. Follow your passion. Follow your passion. If somebody tells you to follow your passion, it means they're already rich. And the guy telling you to follow your passion made his billions in iron ore smelting. This is what you'll be passionate about. Don't mistake your passions for your hobbies. Find something you're really talented at and commit. That's what your 20s is about. Workshop stuff, fail, quit, figure out what you're really good at. I started out in investment banking. I was terrible at it. Kind of a blessing. I figured it out fast. I didn't like them. They didn't like me. I wasn't good at it. Try and find something you think you could be in the top 10% in. Like maybe my natural instincts give me some sort of affinity for this subject matter, and I'm going to commit to being in the top 10%. And then the key is that it's an industry that has a 90+% employment rate. Because there are 180,000 people in SAG-AFTRA. SAG-AFTRA is the union representing actors. They're the most creative, talented people in the world. These 180,000 people, 87% of them don't qualify for health insurance because they don't make $23,000 a year. You want to be in fashion, the arts, creative, start a club for music people or whatever it is, a private members club, you want to start a restaurant, a club, be in sports. Unless you get signals very early in your life that you're in the 0.1%, find something boring, develop mastery, make a lot of money at it, and be a DJ on weekends. And this is what I'm passionate about. I am passionate about taking care of my kids. I'm passionate about taking care of my dad now. I am passionate about doing whatever the fuck I want. I thought I was going to be an athlete when I was young. I would have liked to, but I got disabused of that really fast at UCLA where there were real athletes. And I had a lot of friends who went to the Olympics, played professional tennis, and they went to the Olympics and they got bronzes. I go to the Olympics and watch them, and I'd rather be me. I have a better life than I think everyone but like the top 2 or 3 tennis players in the world. I get to go to Wimbledon because I buy my way in. I'd rather be Nadal or Federer. I'd rather be those guys, but I'd rather be me than the number 7 or number 8 seed. So find what will make you passionate about whatever it is mastery. Tax lawyers, the top quartile of tax lawyers get to fly private and have a larger selection set of mates than they deserve. And that makes them passionate about tax law. Being really good at something, the economic accoutrements of greatness, the camaraderie, the relevance, people start finding you really interesting. They start laughing at your jokes, right? People find you really attractive. You get really sexy when you get really good at something, right? All of that will make you passionate about whatever it is. And here's the thing. There's an inverse correlation between your investment on human capital and your return based on how sexy the industry is. You want to be a DJ, you better be one of the 7 or 8 best in the world. You want to start a platform, a SaaS platform that schedules healthcare maintenance workers, ka-ching. And there's a much greater likelihood you're going to have a great life working 50 hours a week and a lot less disappointment. Sexier an industry is, the harder it is, the lower the return on your invested capital. I'm not trying to crush your dreams. If you want to be in what I want to call one of the romance industries, just have an honest conversation with yourself. The employment in those industries is usually at 90% unemployment. So if you don't figure out really fast you're in the top 1%, go to an industry where you can make a really good living if you're just in the top half. Because if you get into the top 10%, it's going to be champagne and cocaine.
And I'm with you most of the way here, but I'm not sure I can follow you all the way into tax law. My father was a corporate attorney and wonderful man and loved a lot of his work, but he said that he wouldn't recommend for any of his 3 sons, his 3 children to become attorney because he said, Rufus, I got tired of giving people advice that they didn't take. So it strikes me, the way I look at it is, if you think of a Venn diagram of like, this is the stuff that I really care about. Here's the stuff that the rest of the world cares about. You better find stuff you're passionate about that other people give a damn about and want to pay you for. And then here's the third circle is business models that work, that can make you real money.
Isn't that what do they call it? Ikagi, the Japanese thing? Something people will pay you for, something you're good at. Ikigai. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Thank you, sir. Ugly American, culture appropriation. Cancel me now.
I did it without even realizing it.
Yeah, you just did it.
Yeah.
What am I missing? The circles? What is?
4 circles.
What are the 4?
So it's something that you're good at, something you enjoy, something that people will pay you for, and then basically like your calling in life and whatever.
Right.
Like you
Okay.
That feels right. That feels like a nice balance.
Same idea.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it does seem to me, I mean, I've been very lucky in my own life. I've managed to find that subset of things that I was passionate about, but also there was a business model available. I mean, clearly that's the holy grail. If you can do stuff that you genuinely love day to day and also make a significant amount of money, enough to have freedom. And something I really relate with that you say is basically like, what do we want? On some level, we all just want the dignity of being able to choose what we do with our time, the people we're with, how we apply our time. And that does require money. And more specifically, as you say, it requires you have a formula for this. What's your number? 25 times your annual burn. If you want to spend $100,000 a year, you need 2.5 million, I think is your math. If you want to spend $1 million a year, you need 25 million. Can you share that math?
Yeah. So what is rich? Rich is passive income that's greater than your burn. I have a close friend who runs a large group in an investment bank. He makes between 3 and 7 million a year, but his current income, 53% tax rate in the US, I'm sorry, in New York. So he takes home, saying given year 3 to 4 million. Hard to feel sorry for him. But between his wife, his ex-wife, his 3 kids, his alimony, his home in the Hamptons, his FlexJet card, and his need to have a master of the universe lifestyle to perceive or give out the impression of success, he doesn't really save that much. And I can tell you, he stares at the ceiling. He's younger than me. He's in his 40s, wondering if the music's going to stop. A lot of stress. My father is 93. And between Social Security and his pension from the Royal Navy, he gets, and his, I forget, he has some bonds. He gets $58,000 a year in passive income. Doesn't work, $58,000 a year, and he spends 48. My dad is cheap, and he's rich. He's still saving money. So passive income that's greater than your burn. So 4% is pretty low. Maybe even assume 6%. That's 15 times. That you need 15 times your annual burn. So what people don't realize is being rich is more a function of how much you spend as opposed to how much you make. So as you get older, a lot of people complain that I give a lot of advice to young people like, well, what if I'm in my 50s? I'm like, okay, look out to 70. No one's going to retire at 65, nor should you. Mortality rate spikes when you retire. You want to live longer? Keep working. Work used to be backbreaking, terrible, dangerous work. It's not that way then. Now that actually keeps people alive. So assume you're going to work at least till you're 70, maybe 75, at which point you'll have Social Security or something else, and figure out your lifestyle that you'll need. Plus, and start adding up and then figure out what's my number? What do I need to get to? Such that you feel a sense of control, and hopefully you find a partner and you can start gamifying it. I think it's fun to gamify finance. And the example I use is when I was at UCLA, if I didn't make and save $3,300 every summer, I wasn't enrolling the following fall. I didn't have any money. My parents weren't helping me. I lived in a fraternity, and it was a bunch of rich Jewish kids from the Valley. And there was everybody knew the 6 of us that didn't have any money. It was obvious everyone knew who the 6 guys were that didn't have money. And we used to live together. And we all had jobs. We all had 2 jobs. And we had a whiteboard, and we would gamify spending, because we all needed money or we weren't going back to college next year. And the summer of '85, I spent $73 a week, including rent. I ate top ramen, bananas, and milk. That's all I ate. And on Sunday nights, we used to take a coupon out of the Daily Bruin, and we'd go to all-you-can-eat salad bar and Malibu chicken at the Sizzler. Does anyone remember the Sizzler? It's hilarious. Be like, I don't have a lot of class. Sizzler. And we used to walk in, the entire crew team would walk in, and the guy would be like, you guys are going to bankrupt me. And it would start at 5 and end at 9, and we'd stay for 4 hours and eat for the whole week. But the nice thing about being young is you can try and gamify, or really young, gamify spending, because I still had a nice summer, friends, beer. I still had a good time. So I wish I'd kept investing in that saving muscle. I then got very caught up in kind of being fabulous in perception.
Well, so saving money is apparently something that we in this country are not very good at. And frankly, I in my own life have not been very good at it. And it's astonishing, isn't it, how immediately after getting a raise, your spending just rises just without any effort to that level. It almost feels like a law of physics. And it's a lifestyle creep thing, I think you say.
100%.
And it's just but at the same time, it's just astonishingly stupid, right? To cede control of our lives as we do this. You have this great line in the book. You say, each incremental improvement you make to your lifestyle will make every other aspect of your life seem shabby and in need of a glow up. Right? So you upgrade a piece of furniture and you're like, well, gosh, that other piece of furniture now is looking kind of rough around the edges. Right? But we all fall prey to this.
The most talented people in the world with the kind of most, I don't know, complex, godlike technology are in a conspiracy to hit you at the exact right moment to get you to spend more money. Oh, wait, you're going to upgrade to economy comfort for just $80. Oh, fun weekend? You deserve to be in business class. Right now, it's only $220. So add that flowers chocolate cake from Balthazar Boulangerie to your order from Jack's wife Frida for only another $11. I like flourless chocolate cake. I mean, they hit you with these offers that are almost the amazing thing about a capitalist society is there's so many amazing things you can do with money. You should generally assume that you're going to spend all your current income. I never really had the discipline to save from my current income. So what I did was I did forced savings. Find out any way you can to have money taken out of your paycheck. Ideally, it gets matched by somebody or the government, or acorns, round up. I know that sounds stupid, but just never see it. It's really hard. Some people have the discipline to save their current income. Most do not. Most, you get it and you're just gone, right? So find a way to get that money out of your bloodstream before you even see it and get it into something diversified, low-cost index funds. I've been around the smartest financial people in the world. I can tell you, no one has any fucking idea. So invest in low-cost diversified ETFs. And if you're young, you got to lean into your advantage. The majority of the advantage of the people in this room is that you're going to live another 60 years. And also try and fight a flaw in the species. And that is because the species hasn't lived longer than 35 for 99% of our time on this planet. We don't appreciate how fast time is going to go. You can't imagine yourself older than 35 because the majority of the time you didn't live past 35. But here's the thing. How old are you, young man? Yeah, you. Yes. Okay, Jesus Christ. Good for you. Here's the thing. If you save, okay, one less coffee from Starbucks, one less awesome pair of shoes, I don't know, stream Coachella this year, and try to spend if you can save $300 a month from this point forward in some sort of tax-deferred vehicle, two things are going to happen. When you're my age, you're going to have millions of dollars. No, if you pick 5 stocks in the S&P and hold them for 10 years, no one has ever lost money. The S&P has been up 11% a year for the last 15 years. 11% sounds like nothing at your age because you're probably a baller at whatever you're doing, think you're going to be a big baller. That means money is going up 8-fold every 21 years, all right? In addition, at that, when you get to that, what I'll tell you about that point is, and I'm pretty sure you're going to agree with me, I was you yesterday.
Yeah.
You don't realize how anyone here over the age of 40 looks back and goes, Jesus Christ, that was a blank. So if I gave you a box and I said, all right, this magic box, if you can find, you're living in New York, you're probably making a good living. If I gave you a box right now and said, if you put $5,000 in it, in a blink, it's going to be worth 450 grand, how much would you put in it? And we have that box. You have that box. Your advantage is you're probably going to be here for another 80 years. And it's going to go really fast. And so why wouldn't you lean into your advantage and hope that you sell the next big bestseller or that your company goes public? But just in case it doesn't, know that when you wake up when you're our age, just with a little bit of discipline and ignoring it, don't day trade, don't do anything in fucking crypto. Don't try and pick stocks. Nobody knows, right? Own assets, save for a house, but SPY, low-cost index funds, $300. If you had taken all the money, and this is that famous Tony Robbins TikTok, and spent all the money instead on, I've owned every Apple phone. My assistant knows to get me the newest Apple phone because I like to signal my worth as a mate to strangers. When you have an Android phone, you're kind of saying to the rest of the world, life hasn't panned out the way I'd hoped. But seriously, this is...
And you're not just saying this because you own Apple stock.
This is saying your kids are more likely to survive than if you have sex with someone who has an Android phone. So, but if I wasn't such a narcissist, if I had taken all the money I've spent on iPhones and bought Apple stock, this is true, Tony Robbins of all people did the math, I'd have $3 million in Apple stock. I mean, the power of compounding at your age is just, that's your advantage. You probably don't have any access. You don't get sweet deals. But you have this unbelievable asset called time. Resist the flaw in the species. People your age are rebellious. They want a rebellion. They're angry. That's healthy. You don't believe us. You don't believe old people. You want to be rebellious, especially a male. You're risk aggressive. The rebellion you want is rebel against social media that wants you to hate your fellow man. Rebel against that. Rebel against the industrial food complex that wants to get you addicted to shitty fatty food, get you obese, and then turn you over to the diabetes industrial complex. Rebel against that. Rebel against dating apps that want to tell you have no worth. You have worth. You just got to get in front of people and show them your body language and your pheromones and your humor and your persistence. Rebel against every fucking tech company that wants to convince you that you can have a reasonable facsimile of life at home on Reddit, on Discord, and on YouPorn. That's the rebellion. That's what you need to fight against as a young person, especially a young man, and also fight against the notion that you're going to have a big win and just start saving a little bit of money every month and you're going to be just fine. This kid is so upset. I called on him right now.
Well, just to take the pressure off him a little bit, you said, you write, time is a weapon the young rarely recognize or know how to use. I've explained this math to my 16-year-old son, and he said, Dad, I don't want to be rich when I'm 45. I want to be rich when I'm 25. So there is this sense, and as you pointed out, there is a sense if you're 16 years old that like 45 or 55 or 65 is, inconceivable, and yet it happens very quickly. The power of compounding returns is insane. And so your advice here is, pursue a career where you can actually make some money, turn mastery into passion, pursue your hobbies. If you want to write poetry, do it on the weekends. As you're going, save money, invest it in the market, invest it in ETFs. Just in ETFs, you used to pick stocks. You no longer pick stocks.
I do. So I love this stuff. If you want to take 30% of your savings or of your investable capital and pick stocks, pick stuff, you think Dogecoin's going up, whatever, right? You think you have some insight into something, have at it. Because it's fun. You'll learn a lot about the markets, but that's only if you're into that stuff and you want to dope a hit. The problem is as you get older, I only have 15% of my net worth in stocks. So I found myself checking my stocks 12 times a day. And it's bad for my mental health. I don't like that. I don't like to spend that much time on my phone. I love picking stocks because I think it's fascinating and I think it's a way to learn. I can do it. It's unfair. I can call the CEO of almost any company going public, and 1 out of 3 times they'll meet with me, and 1 out of 2 times they'll let me invest in their IPO. And the IPO market is rigged. Heads up, it's rigged. The bank will price it too low to get it a pop, such that the financial press writes about it, and their best clients at Goldman and JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley get an unnatural pop. I have privilege because I work my ass off and I know a bunch of CEOs and I have a platform. I can call the CEO of a pre-IPO company and ask to invest. And most of them say no. A lot of them say yes. You don't have that privilege. You don't have that access. You have a different type of asset. So everybody, I think, in terms of investing has an asset. Do you live in a small remote area and you just know the value of real estate there? Are you handy and you can fix up homes? Buying a home on the cheap, fixing it up, taking advantage of the tax break over 24 months, where you get $250,000, $500,000 if you're married, and you know how to fix up places and you have the patience and the vision to see something you can fix up, that's an unbelievable way to build wealth. And by the way, you can roll it in, 1031 it into another asset, tax deferred. Sit down and think, what is my advantage to get rich? What is my advantage? And almost everyone has an advantage. Youth is, I have very little money, very little contacts, no knowledge of the market. Oh, but you're 30? You got 50 years. Find a little bit of a savings muscle, start investing in low-cost ETFs. I can't resist investing in stocks. I love it. I find it interesting. But the majority of my money is now in privates because I have access. I like getting involved in these companies, and I can take more risks than most people. But you don't have that advantage. For most people, I think you want to invest in low-cost ETFs.
Yeah, I think that's sound advice. So, as you know, Scott, because we were speaking earlier, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've started 3 businesses. I'm building my 4th. sold the first three, only really produced a great financial return on one of the three.
Yeah.
Sold our last business to Disney, but took the outcome of that. It was 7 figures, not 8 figures, and put it all into, most of it into Amazon, Apple, Google, and Tesla,
So you're fine.
and bought and into real estate. So that worked out pretty well. I thought I was a genius. Then I went back and looked at the math, and had I invested it in the NASDAQ 100, I would have basically had the same return. Because the NASDAQ 100, if you look at like QQQ Power Shares or something, has returned 21% in the last average year over year in the last decade. Less than that if you go back 15 years or 20
Right.
years. This is one thing that I was surprised by, because you wrote a book called Before about 4 of the biggest tech companies in the world that are among the 10 most valuable companies today. I'm surprised that you wouldn't counsel people to prioritize a NASDAQ 100 ETF over an S&P 500 ETF.
Well, it's funny that I track everything. I get between 40 and 50 questions a day via email. LinkedIn, someone writes me a really thoughtful email asking a question. And the number one question is for mothers. They want advice about their sons. Young men are failing and really struggling in this country. And the people I get the nicest emails from are mothers. And it generally goes something like this. I have 3 kids, 2 daughters, 1 son. One daughter's in Chicago doing PR. The other's at graduate school in Penn. And my son is in the basement vaping and playing video games. Women globally have ascended faster in the last 30 years than any cohort in history. They're double the number of elected positions in parliament in the last 30 years. There's more women seeking tertiary educational attainment now than men globally. When you think about certain nations where women don't go to college, the fact that globally there's more women, that's extraordinary. There's no cohort in America that's fallen faster than men, young men. They're really 4 times as likely to kill themselves, 3 times as likely to be addicted. Fewer single men own homes. We're getting close to 2 to 1 female to male college graduates. And that really impacts the mating market, because we don't like to have an honest conversation around mating. And that is, women mate socioeconomically horizontally and up, men horizontally and down. And when the pool of horizontal and up keeps shrinking, women quite frankly, just aren't interested in mating with the pool of young men we're producing in this society. 2 in 3 women under the age of 30 have a boyfriend. 1 in 3 men under the age of 30 have a girlfriend, because women are dating older because they can't find economically or emotionally viable young men. So this is like a project for me. I relate to these guys, but the second most questions, or the first most questions I get, is issues surrounding young men. The number one question I get is it too late to buy NVIDIA? Literally. I get that question like 5 times a day. Hey, I have a question. This may seem a little strange, but do you think it's too late to buy NVIDIA? And the honest answer is, I don't know, but this is the answer I give. I don't know, but if you buy an S&P index fund, 33 cents on the dollar will go to the Magnificent Seven. I can make a case for all these companies are going to double. My stock pick of the year is Alphabet. It has access to all of your calendar, your videos, your email. It's going to be able to figure out, oh, Scott OSC is the same person to get his teeth cleaned in New York. Our AI is going to speak to their AI, and it's going to look at my calendar, see that I'm name dropping now. I got Bill Maher on Friday night. I know exactly where I want to stay. Google's AI should be able to handle everything for me very soon, because they have a proprietary data set to feed into their LLM. Anyways, that's Google. But if you invest in the Magnificent Seven in an S&P fund, 33 cents on the dollar goes to the Magnificent Seven, because they're now worth 33% of the S&P. But just in case the other 493 stocks have their time in the sun and the 7 are overvalued, you're hedged. You should be okay. And the wonderful thing about America, because of demographics and because of productivity and technology and an unbelievable culture around making money, over the medium and long term, the S&P is generally up and to the right. And so don't convince yourself that you know the answer, whether NVIDIA is going to go up. No, you don't. None of us do, right? So you don't need to find the needle in the haystack. Just buy the whole haystack. But people are constantly asking me, which stock? I'm like, okay, have some fun. Take a third maybe of your investment capital and convince yourself you know what you're doing. Fine. And occasionally you might have opportunity. You might see it. You own 2 food trucks and someone offers you a 3rd food truck because they're retiring. There are millions of baby boomers retiring with small businesses. And young people are not there to take those businesses. There's 5 people exiting the trades sector and only 2 going into them because we've shamed those industries. So you might have special access to outsized opportunity for your finite investment capital. Lean into this. Make sure you talk to a lot of people, though, to get their advice so you're not doing anything stupid. That's another big mistake I made when I was your age. I thought masculinity and leadership was never asking other people for advice because I was so fucking smart. What an idiot to not ask people about stuff. Hey, should I borrow money against the one stock I have, red envelope, to buy more red envelope? Someone might have said, what happens if it goes down, Scott? Like, what happens to you and your mental health if you're levered up and it goes to 0 in 3 weeks? What happens to you? Like, if someone had cared, that wouldn't have been a hard question had I sought mentors. But anyways, stock picking, take the majority of your money. I mean, I work with the brightest people in the world in finance. Do you realize 100% of all economists, they have never been unanimous on anything in this Bloomberg survey. In 2022, for the first time, they had unanimous agreement among all economists. And the thing they all agreed on was that in 2023, we were definitely going into recession. Did anybody predict that mortgages would go from 2.5% to 7.5% and real estate prices would skyrocket? None of us know. I mean, we have maybe occasional ideas. Warren Buffett's been pretty good, but Warren Buffett will admit, I really haven't beat the S&P by very much. So fall out of the delusion that you understand the markets better than anybody. You might have special advantage, lean into your advantage. Stock picking is fun. I really enjoy it. I think I learn a lot from it. I like to think I can teach people about the markets by understanding it. But disabuse yourself of the notion you can outperform the market. And here's the good news. You don't need to outperform the market. We live in the most remarkable economy in the world. Remember the Chinese were going to overtake us? In the last 3 years, they've shed $6 trillion in their stock market. We've had 7 companies at $4 trillion since the beginning of the year. You are in the right place. Bet on America, bet on the S&P. If you want to have a world fund to diversify away from America, I get that. But boy, you don't need to be a hero. You don't need to swing for the fence.
And you used to, though, do more of this just to keep you honest.
Don't do that.
There was some. I was amused to discover yesterday that there were some wisecrackers who created an anti-Galloway index with the tagline "Bet against the professor." And they said basically, if they bought every stock that you said was going down, they produced excellent returns.
Yep.
Right. So you had, I think you've said that you lost $15 million shorting the market last year.
That's not true. I lost $17 million.
Okay. Okay. But you also bought claims on FTX and quadrupled your money in about 6 months, which who would have seen that coming? Right. So but it seems like you used to do more stock picking. You've moved towards the ETF model, which makes total sense to me. When you look at, I mean, as you say, nobody can predict the future, but it's, since 1871, the stock market's returned over 9% annually, if you include dividends, since 1871. Since 1957, when the S&P 500 was introduced, it's returned closer to 10% annually. But my investment thesis is, NASDAQ 100 since 1985 has had an average return of almost 14% in the last 15 years, 16% in the last 10 years, 21%. The difference between a 10% annual return and a 20% annual return is massive.
Yeah.
And it does seem to me like the big tech companies, there's a different physics that's happening when you have these network effects, all these converging technologies. Do you not think, I mean, I would bet you a good bottle of red wine that 10 years from now, the NASDAQ 100 will trounce the S&P in the next 10 years.
Yeah, the question is, at some point, every dog has its day. And at some point, good companies that aren't in tech get oversold. You can buy really good companies fairly inexpensively because the Magnificent Seven have soaked up all of the capital. And there are periods when tech goes down. Do you know that in 1999, the company that was the most valuable company in the world was Cisco? It was like, we don't know what to do, everything. It's a weird market, infrastructure, well managed. Cisco lost 90% of its value between 1999 and 2001. You know who else lost 90% of their value from 99 to 2001? Amazon. So these companies, tech, when the good times are rolling, tech rolls, but take it from me, when tech gets hit, whoa, it gets hit hard. So what I do is I vastly diversify. I don't put more than 3 or 4% of my net worth in any one thing. Diversification is your Kevlar. And that is, you can go to zero. You can get hit by a bullet, go to zero. I've had a lot of investments go to zero. That hurts, but I have Kevlar. It hurts, but it's not fatal because I now make sure that I have investments spread across everything. You don't quite have that luxury when you're young, especially if you're an entrepreneur. You have to be very concentrated. But when I sit on boards of companies, the first thing I suggest to management when they have a fundraising, I'm like, take some money off the table. I'm like, no, we're in it to win it. This is going to be huge. I'm like, hope you're wrong. Take some money off the table and invest in something entirely different than this industry, such that if this thing goes down, you're still like, you have your mental health. You don't have to go home and tell your husband that we need to sell the house. I've had friends go through this. I mean, that shit's really upsetting, right? But I don't know if I agree because I'm overinvested in tech, but being overinvested in tech has been pretty rough on my mental health sometimes. And unfortunately, the way to build $1 trillion company right now is to find a flaw in the species, young girls trying to figure out their social capital, need for affirmation, young men's risk aggressiveness, gambling, and create a technology company that taps into a flaw in young people's insecurities and vulnerabilities and takes advantage of the fact that our elected representatives are a cross between the Golden Girls and the Walking Dead and have absolutely no idea and how to control these technologies. They have no empathy. When Speaker Pelosi's first daughter was born, Castro had just declared martial law in Cuba, and 2/3 of households didn't have a color television. But she's supposed to understand the algorithm, sending out extreme dieting tips to a 5'7", 95-pound-year-old, 16-year-old girl. She's supposed to understand what a single mother is going through trying to raise a boy who's addicted to gambling apps or is juuling all day. I mean, how on earth can these people, oh, by the way, though, Social Security gets a $135 billion increase in cost of living adjustment. I mean, you can bet seniors are going to be taken care of. So look, I don't know. I'm sticking with diversification. And if you buy the SPY, 33 cents on the dollar are just going to those 7 companies that we love that have godlike technology. But NVIDIA is trading at 60 times revenues right now. If NVIDIA went down 80%, it still wouldn't look cheap. If it doubles, we're going to say, well, of course it doubled. And if it goes down 80%, you and I would be like, well, of course it went down 80%. We just don't know, but you don't need to know. You don't need to know. All you need to know is that over the long term, the American economy is really outstanding. I'm sounding very Buffett-like.
Well, my last contrarian view I'll share is that what I'm seeing in recent years is the flight to safety when the market starts to tremble is moving more towards big tech. It used to be the flight to safety was away from technology.
Right.
Now I see the flight to safety moving towards tech. So to me, tech is both the safest place to be and the highest return. But
And you have an e-commerce incubator, right?
No, I have a company that's John Borthwick has
That's right.
has the accelerator. But turning to luck and timing, you have a great section in the book about how critical timing is, right? Because to time the changes in market sectors. And how do you think about, we were talking earlier about how, 7 or 8 years ago was a great time to start a podcast. 5 years ago was a pretty good time to start a podcast. Today, it's really hard to start a podcast.
Yeah.
And this is true of so many things. What do you think? What do you see as opportunities that are well timed today? And how do you think the people listening can think about timing?
Well, it's really hard to time the markets. I'm always invested in the markets. I'm always, like you talked about, I just got to mention the anti-Galloway ETF or index. I wrote a blog post saying that Oyo, WeWork, Snap, Pinterest, Tesla were all massively overvalued. And some VCs who I don't have a great relationship with the VC community said, oh, he's wrong. And they did an index. And because Tesla literally went up 15x, like if you had gone long, the companies I said to short, it was way up. But what's interesting is 4 years ago, when these stocks started crashing, they stopped publishing the index. And this is the beauty of online, is the shit that makes you look like an asshole goes viral. But once you look like less, like I actually think the anti-Galloway, if anyone wants to do the math, I think I'm up now because Snap's come down 90%, WeWork's gone away. But online, people aren't interested in that. There's no fun in that. They just want to mock you. Anyways, I sound very defensive.
No, I think it was flattering. They're paying attention to you.
Yeah, I guess. If you're not getting pushback, you're not saying anything, I guess. I forget the question.
Oh, question is when we think about timing, if we think about like there was a time when
What's next?
early people, there was a time when if you got on Twitter early, you could build a big audience. If you started a podcast 7 years ago, you could build a big audience.
Timing.
Now, like Substack or like what are when you think about should people be getting into AI or is that window closing? How do you think about timing these waves?
Well, okay, it's just nearly impossible to time the markets. The one thing you could probably do is look at the most popular job of my students. Second-year MBAs have a tendency to go in things as it's peaking. So whatever my students are doing, don't do. They're very rear view. They're risk averse and they're very rear view mirror looking. In terms of timing, like I think AI, at a minimum, you really want to understand AI. So whether you go to work for AI or you invest in it, you need to every day be on Firefly or understand the difference between Claude and GPT and just get good at it. AI is not going to take your job. Someone who understands AI is going to take your job. And when you're young and your brain is still pretty plastic or malleable, you really want to get good at kind of incorporating this into your everyday workflow, like how you use AI. I always say, like my son is bidding on shoe drops and he downloaded this AI thing, and I'm like, God, he's going to be an economic warrior. I hope. Can't make his bed, but he knows AI. In terms of timing, the honest answer is I think there's going to be a huge opportunity in baby boomers retiring with small, non-romantic businesses. And just think, the guy who hangs your drapes, who has 3 vans, the carpet cleaner. I was talking to the guy cleaning my carpets. He has 2 vans, makes about $200,000 a year. He's retiring. He makes $200,000 on $1 million in assets a year. He clears $200,000, and he has no one to sell the business to. Nobody wants my business. My kids don't want it. They think this is shitty work. I think there's going to be a lot of small business opportunities. I think understanding AI to the other end of the spectrum. If I was to bet on a medium, if I was to really bet on a medium, I mean, first off, if you want to be a punch above your weight class, there's just no getting around it. Social is how people learn about you. You need to find a medium you're good at and commit to being in the top 1% with content or just advertising what you do really well and telling stories online. And that's difficult for some people. It's hard to be very successful without having a really strong social media presence. If I was going to bet on any one platform, I would bet on TikTok. I think TikTok's the most ascendant platform in history. I think it's a security threat. I'm very excited about the ban, which will be a divestment and everyone will be fine. But I would go kind of, if I was trying to bet all my finite human capital on a platform, I would be TikTok. Got to get really good at social media, recognize the opportunity in non-romantic small businesses. I mean, I have basic stuff. Get to a city. I mean, you figured this out. 2/3 of economic growth over the next 20 years is going to be in 20 cities. So if you're good here, you're going to do much better than if you're great in Akron. You're just going to do better. You're bumping off potential opportunities every day here. So get to a city. You do need to have, if you're not in tech, you need to be tech literate. But I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity in the non-tech stuff. I think tech's getting almost a little bit, and I don't know, I think it's getting a little bit over invested. I think there's going to be a lot of people that make a lot of money in really weird analog businesses.
I was surprised that you weren't. You have a wonderful section of the book where you talk about sort of pros and cons of all the different sectors one can go into, whether it's media or finance or consulting or academia. You talk about entrepreneurship, which is great for people who are incapable of working for other people, which apparently describes the two of us.
Yeah.
Is it? I was surprised though that you didn't sound more bullish on entrepreneurship. I mean, it's obviously it's we don't want to false advertise. Building businesses from scratch is really freaking hard. But I've also found it to be deeply gratifying. And when I talk with my kids about opportunities, I certainly would like them to go and work for, some of the companies that are the best at what they do for many, many years before starting a business. But to
Yeah.
me, entrepreneurship is highly appealing. Is it not to you?
Um, uh, so the question I get the most when kids come to my office hours, when I say kids, I mean my students. The question I get the most is they come in and say, I have an offer from Google or JP Morgan, but I really like to start a business. And they come to me as an entrepreneur. And I say, oh my God, don't be a fucking idiot. Go to work for JP Morgan. Just the emotional toll and the roller coaster. Here's the thing, the greatest wealth generator in history, I'm just talking about being an economic animal right now. The greatest wealth generator in the history of the planet is the US corporation. And they will invest in you. They'll remove that mole. They pay for your health care. They'll let you screw up. Unless you really screw up, they usually don't fire you. They will teach you how to read a room. They will force you to be a little empathetic. They will force you to endure injustice. The only thing I can guarantee about the work world is injustice. Someone less talented than you will get promoted faster than you, right? Weird things will happen at a corporation. They turn off your email or they have a new policy and you can't even figure out who made the policy. You don't even know who to call, right? But you learn the ability to navigate and have the maturity. I started at Morgan Stanley, and I'm not doing this as a humble brag. I did not have the skills to be successful in a big corporation. If a group of 5 people went into a conference room, I was convinced they were talking about me. I couldn't stand it when anyone I perceived as being less talented than me got promoted and made more money than me. I just couldn't stand it. I was too insecure to navigate the politics of a big corporation, get along with people, establish allies, be thoughtful. If you have those skills and you have the certification to gain entry into an American corporation, that is absolutely on a risk-adjusted basis the way to go. My stallmate at Morgan Stanley stayed at Morgan Stanley for 30 years. He became vice chairman. We got together. We were very transparent. We are in the same place economically. He's done very well, but he's endured so dramatically less stress. Now, of course, the grass is always greener. He envies kind of my fame he says, wow, what a life. I'm like, dude, do you know what it was like in 2008 when I was broke? I'm like, how much money did you have in 2008? He's like, oh, not a lot. I had 10 million back then. I'm like, I was trying to figure out what the deductible was for a private room for my girlfriend for childbirth. I'm like, you have lived such a not what I'll call, like, you haven't had these deep, really ugly moments. An entrepreneur, the highs are very high, but the lows are really low. And if you don't have the emotional fortitude for that, and you have entree into a big corporation, it's a good company, at a minimum, do what you're talking about. I
Yeah.
needed the guardrails of a big company. I was an idiot. If I knew I didn't have to be up at 8 a.m. to go into Morgan Stanley, I would have gotten high every night. If I didn't need to put on, I wouldn't have showered if I was running my own company at the age of 22. I just wouldn't have done any of these things. I never would have learned how to read a room. I had great people at Morgan Stanley who would call me into a conference room and go, don't say that. Don't be a fucking idiot. I needed to hear that. I needed that. And so I think corporations are vastly underrated. And I think entrepreneurship is vastly romanticized. It is really difficult. And imagine having a business is like conceiving a child. It looks, smells, and feels like you. It kind of inherits your DNA. And the infant mortality rate is about 80%. It is really upsetting when your business dies and it's public failure. So look, if you're blessed enough to have a good opportunity and you're emotionally strong and knock yourself out, but on a risk-adjusted basis, all you hear about in entrepreneurship are the success stories. There are just a lot of companies that fail slowly. You lose your in-laws' money. You don't want to admit how poorly it's going. You think that, oh, if I just work all weekend and ignore my kids, maybe the business will resuscitate. The market doesn't care that you're ignoring your kids. So I don't know. I have some real scars from entrepreneurship. So just go into it with eyes
Yeah.
wide open. I think
Yeah.
the sweet spot is 10 to 50 employees
Yes.
because you've already
Yeah.
starched out a lot of the risk. You're still, if you're talented, can get a sizable piece of equity, but the infant mortality has mostly been starched out, but you're still in a position to get the key to wealth creation, and that is tax deferred equity. So I think the sweet spot for an employee is joining a company, say 10 to 100 employees. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. And it's in my own life, I've just found that it's one of the most deeply gratifying things you can do is to build something with a collection of people.
Agreed.
I mean, you don't have to be the founder, but
Yeah, it's
just
fun.
just to be part of that, it's
It's fun.
deeply gratifying. Let's talk about how much money is enough. You write in the book, young people should be motivated by money in order to get to a certain level of economic security. Beyond that, it becomes a personal matter. More money may make you happier and offer new opportunities, but returns can go negative at some point. Where do you think they go negative?
Well, so you're on this hedonic treadmill your whole life, especially if you didn't have money. It's about more. And the terrible thing about money is you can always imagine more. It's like that scene from Star Wars when Luke says to Han, more money than you can ever imagine. Like, I don't know, I can imagine a lot of money, right? Whatever the number is, I can imagine double it. And I know someone who has double or 10 times it. And I think, oh, it'd be nice to be them. What I think I did, and these are really good problems, but essentially money is the ink in your pen. It can write new chapters, it can write current chapters, and they can burn brighter, but it's not your story. At some point, you have to decide, okay, where do I get real reward? And the majority of people, almost all research shows that the real satisfaction, the real reward in life comes from deep and meaningful relationships. And what I have been good at, I think, is once I got to a certain level of economic security, I thought, I'm going to spend a lot of money on deepening my relationships. I'm going to spend a ton of time doing amazing things with friends and kids. I'm going to give money on things I'm really passionate about and then to give me reward. I'm going to use money as a means of deepening my relationships with people who matter to me. And I'm not going to worry about getting more. I love money. I try and make more, but I'm not worried about it. And I'm like, that's the means. Money is the means. And I understand you should be focused on it. You should be stressed about it. You should be thinking about it a lot. But the ends are deep and meaningful relationships. That is the whole shooting match.
Yeah.
Full stop, right? Not only people who love you, but the opportunity to aggregate enough people who will let you love them immensely. That's it. That's the whole shooting match. And what money does is it releases you from the anxiety so you can lean in and focus on those relationships. When I was starting my business, I don't know how young your kids are, I didn't see my kids really 0 to 5. It took a huge toll on me. It cost me my marriage, it cost me my hair. I didn't see my kids a lot. And this is going to sound terrible. It was worth it. Because now I can spend a shit ton of time with my kids. Now I can give away money. Now I can be generous. Now I can, so I think it just comes down to a sober conversation with yourself. Some people kind of live to work and live to make a lot of money. I was that guy. It was super important to me. I was willing to go all in for 20 or 30 years. I did nothing but work. Maybe you're not that person. I'm not saying it's the right way. It was my way. But have a sober conversation, because the conversation I can't stand is my kids, my students. I do a survey. How much money do you expect to be making by 35? 80% of them expect to be in the top 1%. 80% expect to be in the top 1%. Now, granted, it's self-selecting. These are uber capitalists who are very ambitious. And then I say, what's the most important thing to you? And they'll say, balance. And I'm like, okay, you expect to be making $700,000 a year. Within 7 years, the average age of a graduate at Stern is 28, but balance is the most important thing to you. So I'm like, okay, that's going to work as long as you have rich parents. Here's what I have found. You can work to live. If you want to move to a suburb of St. Louis, work 40 hours a week, be a good, solid citizen at work, but you want to focus on Little League and your kids and your relationship and your church and your community, I think you can be happy. But it's going to happen in St. Louis. And you're not going to be able to do fabulous things. You're not going to stay at the Almond. You're not going to go to Stagecoach and get backstage passes. It's just not going to happen. And that's fine. A lot of people are happy with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But have a sober conversation. And this is the key to, I think, establishing a really good partnership with a spouse. People think the number one cause of divorce is infidelity or a lack of shared values. It's not. As a matter of fact, 70% of divorce filings are by women, and it usually follows a financial stress. And we don't like to talk about this because we like to bag our vants and pretend women are victims and don't have any agency in anything, and that all men are predators, right? I find neither of those is true. But money is why people, generally speaking, get divorced. It raises the blood pressure of the kids when you don't have money. It turns small arguments into big arguments. So very early on saying, what economic weight class do you expect to be in? Who's responsible for maintaining that economic weight class? What is your approach to spending? What is my approach to spending? And really having a partnership around building a base. Oh, you want to live this way? You want to have we want to be in a country club. We want to spend a lot of time with our parents. You're going to work, but I'm going to stay at home. Whatever it is, okay, that means we need to move to a low-cost area. I had that conversation with my partner. We had 2 babies. We were living in New York, and I'm like, I'm making great fucking money, and I feel poor. I'm making so much money, or what felt like a lot of money to me. I think I was sitting on some boards, I was teaching, I was writing books. I think I was making like $600,000-800,000 a year. I never thought I'd make that much money when I was younger, and I couldn't afford to live in New York. I'm like, I'm sick of struggling and being stressful. So we moved to Florida. And my partner was on board with that. Lowered my taxes 13%. And then I got very lucky and things started screaming. So I got very lucky. But have an honest conversation with your partner about your stresses about money, what you expect. Do the goddamn math. How much money do you spend? How much do I spend? How much do you make? How much do we, where do we expect to be in 7 or 8 years? How do we really build a financial life together? And what I'll tell you is that building economic security with a partner is so rewarding. It really is. If you get there and you can do nice things together and you built that life together, it just makes you really, the flip side is it makes you really close. We did this. We can take care of your parents. We can take care of my parents. The flip side is if you're not lined up economically and things get stressful, you start blaming each other. You blame your partner for spending. He might blame you for not making enough money. And it turns every opportunistic infection in your relationship into a full-blown, sickness. And we never talk about it. It's really important. So I think the long way of saying money is, and I figured this out kind of in my 40s. I wrote a book on happiness because I struggle with it. I'm not good at happiness and I wanted to get better at it. And all of the research says the same thing. It's about deep and meaningful relationships. But the problem is without a certain level of economic security, there's stress injected into every one of those relationships. You can't enjoy your kids because you feel like you're failing them. You and your partner have a stressful relationship because one of you or both of you feel like you're failing because you're not providing. So I think that being really focused economically with a partner, and then recognizing once you get to a certain point, a sober conversation around where you expect to live, what your spending should be, and then really leaning in. If you ever get to the point where you have a decent amount of economic success, you don't have to be a baller, but some economic success, recognizing the shit you're going to remember, the things you're going to just love are like, remember when we were walking around Rome with the boys and just how awful they were? That you look back on that. I just went to Egypt with my kids. Oh my God, could they have been more bored in the pyramids? Like, when can we go home and watch TikTok, right? I know they are going to treasure that trip the rest of their lives. I know they're going to look back when we went to the Sphinx, and I just think they're going to love it. And that's what I'll remember on my deathbed, right? I'll look back and go, okay, I was at the Sphinx with my kids, and money helps us do that. That's the key. Money is the means. The ends is it frees up anxiety and gives you the opportunity to strengthen relationships. That's the whole shooting match.
Well, I like this framing of it's at the end of the day, happiness equals love, right? Which is the conclusion of the big Harvard longevity study,
Right.
the grant study. At the end of the day, other people and our relationships with other people is what determines our happiness. And the way that money affects that informs when money is positive or negative. Example, like studies that show that lottery winners, people who win the lottery, often end up less happy afterwards. Well, why would that be? Well, they have a collection of friends in a community, and all of a sudden they have all this money, and everybody wants something from them, and they're no longer apart, or they move to another neighborhood. They lose their community, they lose their people. So it seems to me that money can both have the effect of strengthening your relationships with the people you care about, but also can potentially over time, in some cases, have a negative effect. Like you can look around, wake up one day and realize 3/4 of the people I interact with work for me. And so many of the people I interact with want something from me. Don't you think that there might be some inflection point where there's a level of money where it becomes actually harder to have close relations?
I would categorize that as a good problem. But I think that what you're talking about, or what I think is, it's so easy. I do a team meeting. We do a team meeting and we do the editorial. Everyone thinks it's me in my kitchen doing all this content, like sketching graphs and doing a camera. Prop G Media is 14 people, and they're really talented, really hardworking, really smart people that scale the stuff we do. And the the notion that we're like doing this together is super super rewarding. But what you have to do, and it's tough for me because I'm a narcissist and I have a big ego. We do this editorial call, and one of the kids will disagree with me and goes, "That's stupid," and I'm like, "I'm going to fire that." I just get so fucking angry. I'm like, "How dare he? Does he not know that I'm going to be at BetaWorks doing a book event?"
Uh-huh.
And what I realize is, if you're have any semblance of success or wealth, you have to surround yourself with people who keep it real, because it is so easy to surround yourself with people who are so fascinated by you and what you do. And you're spreading homophobic conspiracy theory on your new social media platform. You're a genius. You don't think people are telling Musk that every day? Oh God, you're such a leader. We love how politically incorrect you are. If you don't surround yourself with people who are willing to push back on you and say, that was really stupid, you shouldn't do that, you're gonna lose you kind of lose the plot. So I think it's really important to surround yourself with people who are willing to say, it's weird. The president of the board of advisors, this incredibly successful person at his name's Bill Berkeley at NYU. He calls me on a regular basis. And when I write something, and he'll be like, he doesn't even go, "Hi, it's Bill, can you talk?" I just pick up the phone. He's like, "For someone so smart, you do really stupid things." I'm like, "Hi, Bill." And I get angry and I think, like, why am I taking this guy's calls? And I realize how important it is, because it is really hard to read the label from inside of the bottle. And another thing I didn't do as a young man is I didn't have a kitchen cabinet of people on my shoulder who will tell you, "No, it's a bad idea, boss." Right? "Oh, wait, you're thinking about getting divorced? No, this is about your shit, not hers." Right? "Oh, you're at war with your sister? That's just stupid. Make up," right? Make up. You need people who save you from yourself. I don't care who you are. Everyone has a certain amount of bad judgment, and you need guardrails. You need people in your life who can really push back on you, because as you get wealthier, more successful, it's really easy. You think Mark Zuckerberg thinks he's a bad person? I think he sleeps like a baby at night. I don't think he's surrounded himself with people who will say, "Yeah, what's the point? You're worth $60 billion and you're depressing teens all over the world. Like, what are you doing?" I don't think he has a single person in his life that he trusts who he will take that advice from. So anyways, do you have those people in your life?
I sure do. I sure do. Kids are very good at
Yeah,
that.
kids do that.
Offspring. Procreating is a great way to get a lot of honest feedback, in my experience.
By the way, my young men in my life, my kids, have never once asked me for advice.
Yeah.
Never once.
I know. Well, that's
Like-
why I tried to get them to come here tonight, because they won't listen to this from me, this kind of counsel, but they'll listen to it from you. So
It's There's a lot of studies on this, especially young men. They'll take advice. Their peer group is more important, and they'll take advice from their friends' fathers, but they won't take it from their fathers.
Yeah. Well, Scott, I want to read the last couple sentences from your book, which are so wonderful and really nails and distills your message for listeners. Find something you're good at that people will pay you for and go hard, really hard at it. Spend less than you make so you can deploy an army of capital that fights for you and your loved ones while you sleep. Diversify so you can endure the unknown, have a long-term perspective. All of this can get you to the profound more quickly. And what's the profound? It's about being in the company of others. Thank you, Scott Galloway, for being in our company this evening. Such a lovely conversation.